Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to talk about Prosecco. More specifically, 5 things we don't talk about enough when it comes to this incredible winemaking region, and taste Prosecco styles most people don't even know exist. You see, definitely great majority of people associate Prosecco with light, easy drinking sparkling wine, often mixed with bitter Aperol or white peach puree in the best cases, and sweet peach syrup in the worst. There is so much more to this region that most of us simply don't know. On my last visit there, I realized just how incredibly complex this winemaking area is. And I do not say this as a way to introduce this region more deeply. It truly is complex and can be quite confusing at times. So today I wanted to introduce some truths about Prosecco that we might not all know and taste some great examples along the way, including few you may not realize are made in the area. Prosecco versus Prosecco Conegliano Valdobbiadene. At first, I want to talk about the big difference between these two areas, which at first seem to make this very similar bubbly wine from Glera grapes. Prosecco DOC is largely flat land that is being regularly expanded over time and is worked almost entirely by mechanization. The complete opposite is Conegliano Valdobbiadene, the DOCG, the original home of Prosecco, where the slopes are so incredibly steep that mechanization is almost impossible. In fact, working these slopes require up to 800 hours of man work per hectare, compared with around 150 hours on flat land of the same size. And because Conegliano Valdobbiadene hills are UNESCO World Heritage Site, new vineyards cannot be planted here. I walked those vineyards myself. It is not an easy task for a tourist, let alone to work them. So the price difference is justified right there. Naturally, it offers great difference in the glass as well, so let's taste. So I have Prosecco DOC Extra Dry. For us who speak in English, this is always really confusing. Extra Dry does not mean it's drier than Brut, so Brut is actually drier than Extra Dry. And I do have Adami Valdobbiadene DOCG Extra Brut. It is a single vineyard or single slope wine. So let's taste these ones. I will probably start with Prosecco DOC. And I forgot to mention here the producer is Santa Margherita. It is quite known and large producer in the area, so they produce both DOC and DOCG wines. Maybe I have kept this wine in the fridge for too long because it is not as expressive as I would expect and it's just too cold, so that's my mistake. But somewhere in the background you start to feel those white peaches and apples and pears, yellow, ripe, sweet plums, some delicate floral notes. Fresh, lively, juicy, bright, everything you expect Prosecco to be. And I think because it is so cold, I did not pick the residual sugar so much in the glass. You start to feel that pear drop now. This is such a significant element of Prosecco. It almost screams, I am Prosecco, I'm Glera. It is clean and fruit-driven. It might not be particularly long, but you also don't expect it to be very long wine, and it does not cost you a fortune. It is decent and honest wine. It is not pretending to be something else. It is not. I will give this wine 87 points. Let's move to wine number 2, which is Adami Valdobbiadene DOCG Extra Brut. This is actually single vintage as well, so this is 2024. This is non-vintage. Okay, on the nose, it is more open and it is less pinky girly type of nose. You have maybe some dried white florals, maybe like dried orange or tangerine peel. We have white peaches here as well on the nose, but not as bubbly, not as candied, not as bonbongy as we had them in the wine number 1. And the nose is really persistent and quite inviting, and it does leave the impression of a serious wine. Let's taste it. There was a time when I was not a fan of Brut or Extra Brut or Zero Dosage Proseccos. I always felt that the residual sugar gave something to the wine that maybe it was missing otherwise. And I don't know, is it me that has changed? Or is it the winemaking that has changed? But now in this wine, so this is Extra Brut, I do not think it lacks anything. It does have that really bright, beautiful, zesty, not zesty, juicy acidity. And it has lovely fruit on the palate. And I don't feel like I need the sugar here to compensate for something. So it feels complete wine. And maybe I tasted before some wines where sugar was needed to maybe add some mid-palate or backbone. Here you do not need it. And I do enjoy this wine. It actually has quite long aftertaste and it is really fresh and really lively. And I will give this wine 92 points. And just so you know, this wine, the Prosecco DOC, is around 10 euros, at least in my market. And Adami is around 20 plus euros. So even though the time you have to invest in the vineyards is around 5 to 6 times more in the Adami bottle, it is only twice as expensive. So when it comes to Prosecco, it absolutely makes sense to trade up. The Charmat has not always been the traditional winemaking method here. That might seem strange to some wine lovers now, because that light, floral, grape and fresh peach dominant aroma we associate with Prosecco is so closely linked to the Charmat, or Martinotti method, which apparently is what it should be called. Because of it, we can have fruit-driven, juicy wines available quite early after the harvest. But the Martinotti method has been widely used only since the mid-20th century. And while we often say that Martinotti method is a cheaper way to get bubbles, we sometimes tend to forget the original investment, which is sealed tank that can withstand high pressure, has precise temperature control, and technology to monitor the whole process. For small producers, that is a serious expense. Historically, wine was made by farmers and almost in every family. And it simply made more sense to make sparkling wine in a bottle. It was much easier and didn't require that initial investment. That's why Sui Lieviti style is the authentic Prosecco, and I encourage everyone to try this unique category. The second fermentation actually happens in the bottle. Similarly as in the case of champagne, the very same bottle you are served in a restaurant or buy in a shop. Only the yeast is not removed, so there is no disgorgement. In Conegliano, Valdobbiadene area, you will always be advised to decant the wine and remove the sediment before service. I myself do not mind the yeast, and I will gently shake the bottle before serving and then pour it into glass. I think the yeast offers extra mouthfeel and authenticity to the wine. Some producers call or even label their Sui Lieviti wines as Col Fondo. I have come across many different stories explaining the difference between Col Fondo and Sui Lieviti. Some say that one is frizzante, the other is spumante, while others point to the residual sugar or how long the wine has been aged on its lees. However, to me, the two are almost identical in style. Col Fondo is actually trademark named by two producers and does not require following a specific set of rules. However, if you ask for Col Fondo in Conegliano, Valdobbiadene area, you will get a bottle fermented wine with some potential sediment if it has not been removed during the service. Okay, so we have Sui Lieviti style, so it is with some sediment, with some yeasty elements in the glass, and I don't mind, as I told you before. And it is frizzante. So we can see that this is not the regular mushroom cork. This is actually classic cork because the pressure in the bottle is much smaller. And I will do my homage to Constantin Baum. Now, this is why I love this style so much, because next to these really bright, fresh, fruit-driven characters of these white peaches, white flowers, white stone fruit, crushed stone fruit, you have some of that earthy element that comes from the yeast. You have some of that bready note, something buttery, something really exciting in the glass. So it kind of gives an extra dimension, extra layer to the wine. And this is such an interesting winery, Zago. It is done by brother and sister who I was very lucky to meet. I actually met their mother as well, who has been even here in Rive, visited my country, and she showed me pictures. It was an amazing visit. And the wines really showed themselves. They were unique. They just stood out in between the other wines that I tasted during that trip. And the nose here in this wine, it just seems more grown up. Maybe we do not have these super bright on steroids kind of fruit, but more crushed, in some places maybe dried or scratched, but still very, very inviting. Maybe there's some dried peel here and there, or slightly cooked or candied orange tangerine peel, zest. Let's taste this wine. Once again, this is a beautiful example that Prosecco not necessarily needs its sugar, something that maybe 5 or 6 years ago I was convinced it does. And this bottle has 0 residual sugar. But I think the mouthfeel here comes from the ripeness of the fruit, the complexity of the wine, from the yeast itself. It is just overall really pleasant and beautiful and quite complex wine. What is really interesting here as well, so we have the grape varieties listed on this label. So it's Glera, Bianchetta, Verdiso, and Perera. Is a Latvian language. And Perera. And when I was talking with them, what was really interesting to me is that it's a field blend. So they harvest all the grapes at the same time, because it's not just a vineyard of Glera and then you harvest some of the Perera from the other side or the other slope. It's all within one vineyard, so they harvest all together and the grapes all go together in the tank and in the press. And I thought it was really unique. I never heard about that in the Prosecco area, because you tend to think about Prosecco as being this large production, all mechanized, really tip, top, everything done. Nothing really that authentic or handcrafted, and this is definitely handcrafted. Let's taste this wine again. I mean, even though it is frizzante, the bubbles are very persistent still, and I've been quite aggressive with the wine itself in the glass. I've been swirling it around. It is still there. It still stays strong. So I will give this wine 93 points. Tranquillo is a still wine made from Glera grapes within the Prosecco area. I have never tasted still Prosecco, so this is going to be first for me. I know the grape. Glera tends to be light-bodied, so it naturally pairs well with bubbles that add extra texture and mouthfeel. Now, this is one wine that I almost feel in my bones that will not make friends with oak, so you will rarely find any wine that has been aged in oak or aged at all in that matter. So let's taste the Tranquillo styles, the still Glera. I have never tasted it before. In the internet, I could find Prosecco DOC Tranquillo, but this is Valdobbiadene DOCG, so this is still wine from the Valdobbiadene area. smells interesting. I was expecting this really bright and juicy fruit, but at first it is quite shy and it is not as expressive as I was expecting it to be. And it smells more of wine than Prosecco. So you kind of have a bit of white currant, maybe some like green peaches, unripe peaches here. But there's also something floral, hints of floral elements, white florals. Let's taste this wine. This is interesting. On the palate, this wine does have Prosecco soul. You feel that lightness, you feel that jolliness, you feel that silliness that sometimes Prosecco brings to our minds. And so while on the nose, it felt different, on the palate, it felt quite similar, except for the bubbles. What was also interesting here is that it seemed to me to have more prominent, more persistent acidity. And I am not sure about the laws there. Is it natural acidity or is it maybe something that has been adjusted here? It just felt a bit more intense than maybe I have experienced in classic bubbly Proseccos. The nose, however, still confuses me a little bit. And maybe the acidity is too prominent and maybe sweeps away a bit of that fruit on the mid palate and the finish. This is why I will give this wine 88 points. I think it is really interesting and exciting to try still Prosecco. This is the very first bottle ever I have tasted it, so I don't have a lot of experience and it can be quite confusing and difficult to judge the wine. At the very moment, I will say that I will stick more to the bubbles of Prosecco, but I mean, one wine does not represent the all category or the style, so I will make sure the next time I have possibility, I will try it again. I want to come back to the steep slopes of Conegliano, Valdobbiadene area because anyone who visits them is immediately convinced that this is an absolutely amazing terroir for production of a great wine. And it is important to know that this is the original area where the Prosecco boom was born in the 1980s. Before traveling to Valdobbiadene, I listened to a few podcasts focusing on this region and wine style, and what really surprised me was Susie Berry, Master of Wine, quoting an earlier piece she wrote in 2003, saying that at the time Prosecco was an insider's wine, something only experts and engaged wine consumers really knew about. She said that the only problem is that not enough of us know about it. Can you imagine? That, of course, is no longer true, and it would be difficult to find a person who has not heard of this bubbly name. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below what are your relationship with Prosecco. Have you tried these styles? Did you know about these styles? Do you know the difference between Sui Lieviti and Col Fondo, if there is any? But Prosecco is one of those mainstream wines that sometimes professionals reject, so make sure to watch my other video about wines that professionals hate, but general public love.